So improving the closely spaced interchanges, extending light rail to Vancouver. That light rail will go to Clark College in Vancouver. To make pedestrian and bicycle facility improvements. And for funding, we need to toll the facility, and we are anticipating, as I mentioned, electronic tolling to do that. So that's sort of, where we're at with basic components. What we've been doing since we had those basic components settled is to make further decisions. We're really at this very high level of design. We've obviously been talking about it for a long time. People are like, get on with it, start moving forward, I know. But we have to kind of take what we have right now, which are these big decisions, and make them more real and understand what they mean at the more local level. So that's what we've been working on. We have a design concept for the I-5 bridge. What this is it's a structure that hasn't been built in the United States before. It has been built in the world. It has an interesting component to it, which the structure of it provides an upper deck and a lower deck. That lower deck is actually large enough to be able to provide the space for light rail trains to run inside the structure below the highway deck. So we get a little bit more bang for our buck in building these bridges across the river. So the nice thing is you can see here, you can see some of this, the hatching on the sides of the bridge below the main deck. That actually means that those spaces underneath the driving deck for the highway will be open to the air outside. So you'll be able to see in and out of the structure. So as you're traveling on light rail, you don't just come from Hayden Island and go into a tunnel. There's actually this sort of space and air, so you can see out. Similarly, the light rail would travel under the southbound bridge, and then we'd also be able to accommodate a pedestrian and bicycle path across the river under the northbound bridge, on the outside of the northbound bridge. So people would have views out to Mount Hood from that side. So, and this actually is the pedestrian bicycle path. It would be really wide across the section, 24 feet wide, and pretty tall too. It's going to be a pretty open and airy space. 23 to 30 feet high as you're moving through there. We also have the opportunity to build out an overlook sort of at the middle of the river, so folks would have a place too if they wanted to take a picture, or you have friends visiting, you want to go and like get a nice picture of Mount Hood from the river, you could actually go and take something from that sort of vista point. We've been working on light rail design in Vancouver, and this is looking at which streets light rail would run on. And also where the track would lie in the street. So we know that light rail will run north and south on Broadway in Washington. So you'll come across the water, sort of head over to Broadway, or head up Broadway, and then be traveling east-west, as recommended by the Vancouver Working Group, would be on McLaughlin Boulevard over to Clark College. We've also been working on light rail planning on Hayden Island. This is something where I'm not the best expert on it, so Chris Novotny, who just walked in, I'll point her out.
Hi.
And Coral are both folks who've been working with transit. So if there are specific questions about this when I'm done, they can certainly field those questions. So we've been working with a group called the Portland Working Group. They are actually hosting this open house that I mentioned on February 10th, so they should be there, likely with some emblazoned with something to point them out, so you can ask them questions as well. They have some design criteria that they've adopted for the station, and really have been paying close attention to how it integrates with the Hayden Island plan. We're expecting one station on Hayden Island, that it would be pretty close to, it would be next to I-5 on the west side of I-5, pretty close to where the highway exit is right now. If you're heading southbound, there's sort of highway exit and off that connects you into the supercenter, so it would be right about that location. So with respect to the Hayden Island plan, that red dot that's over here on the right, that you can actually see the T, that would be roughly where it would be the transit station. We have the design concept for this is shown here. Interstate 5 is over on the right-hand side of your screen. Tomahawk Island Drive is a new connection that would be provided underneath I-5. So in addition to the two crossings you have right now, you would have a third crossing under the river, or under the highway, which would not have to interface with interstate traffic. What this design shows is that there's, on one side, on the north side of Tomahawk Island Drive, there's expected to be some kind of plaza, so some kind of community space, a little more open, that connects the transit station, which will be a little bit grade separated. It'll be a little higher than the street, so it allows a sort of a slow, easy path from your at grade along Avenue, what's listed as Avenue A here, up to the transit station. The next slide is going to show, you'll see this red line here. And the next slide, I think, is going to show that as a cross-section, just so you can see what that space looks like again. So this is looking essentially from, if you're standing on the street, shows the plaza on the left here, and then the steps that would be there. There would also be ADA ramps to be able to get up to the station, and then the roadway on the right-hand side, Tomahawk Island Drive, as it goes underneath I-5. This is another visualization. We're going to have a few of these visualizations at the February 10th workshop. People have been asking a lot of questions about what is it going to look like as I go underneath I-5. So we have 6 different perspective views. This is one of them that kind of shows what that's going to look like. Crossing underneath I-5, there's a number of different bridges. So it's not as though you're in sort of the tunnel, the one pedestrian tunnel that's on the island today. It's not going to look like that. It's going to be a street running through there, and there'll be these different bridges at different heights. So there will be some opportunities for light and air to come into that space. It's going to be a little different than that, than the very small tunnel that people don't like, I know right now, that crosses underneath I-5. We have been working on talking with our federal and state partners about funding. Part of that conversation has been a request from them to look hard and long at the project to understand if there are any opportunities to provide similar benefits for the project for a lower cost. It's essential to, part of our goal really, and part of what we understand to be the interest of the public is to find a way to build this project. And part of that is trying to figure out ways to have constructive conversations with our potential financing partners. And so they've really had us, they said, we really need you to find some ways to save some money. So we have some proposed refinements that could save up to $650 million off project costs. Part of that is moving to a 10-lane bridge, and part of that is, obviously, if folks have been following the newspaper, is some of the source of concern from Hayden Island about the project and what could come out of the project based on these design refinements. We did share some information at the last Project Sponsors Council about some design changes we've been able to realize that do address a number of the concerns. This does require the displacement of Safeway, and we recognize that that's a necessary and an important resource for the island, and we are looking at trying to find ways to, within the range of what we can do, to try to find ways to encourage the potential of a grocery and pharmacy on the island in the future. We talked a little bit about tolling. I'll cover it again here because we want to make sure folks generally understand it. We do need to toll the facility to be able to pay for the project. We've expected that for a long time. We are also anticipating using tolls to help manage traffic. What that means essentially is a toll that varies based on time of day, so that during the most congested hours the toll is a little bit higher, and during least congested hours it's lower. Probably what that looks like is on weekends and evenings it's lower, maybe midday it's lower, and then during that sort of 3 to 6 p.m. and 7 to 9 a.m. or 6 to 9 a.m. that the costs are higher. I did mention we're talking about all electronic tolling. There are places in the United States where all electronic tolling is up and operational and works. So we know that it's possible to do. Certainly folks have some concerns about that, and we're looking to know what those are and try to address those as we move forward. But it is expected, it's functional. There are ways to deal with out-of-state folks or other folks, and we'll be doing a lot more work on getting information out about tolling as we move forward. But we just had our first sort of set of tolling discussions about what it could look like, and we have a study report that went to the Oregon and Washington state legislatures just this January to give them some information on our initial work on that. We also will, in the future, we'll need to have preliminary construction conversations. I know there have been some concern from at least some folks in the manufactured home community and other folks on Hayden Island about construction concerns as we move forward. We have, small amounts of detail on this right now. We do have some sense of some possible staging locations, but we don't have a ton of detail. But what we are committed to doing is making sure that as that detail gets developed, we talk with folks here to understand what the specific concerns are for folks here. We do recognize that I-5 is the only connection from Hayden Island to the outside world, and that that's important for medical care and other things. So there's a recognition that we have to maintain some kind of access on I-5 really at all times to be able to provide those emergency services.